Rebecca Johnson, and I believe you'll hear from Ms. Johnson or Michelle Rogers, who is her partner there, about those. Maya was never determined to have any type of conversion disorder or factitious disorder by any psychiatrist or psychologist, except that as part of CRPS, there can be certain symptoms of conversion, which is, how do you explain this? The feelings of pain become so exaggerated, this allodynia, that the patient is anticipating pain before it actually happens. So she goes and has the therapy, but still nothing is working and nothing is really getting her out of the extreme pain on a long-term basis. So Dr. Kirkpatrick, and you'll hear from Dr. Kirkpatrick here to explain all of this. Unfortunately, in the United States, the procedure that had been shown to work the best for intractable CRPS, long-term ketamine infusion under general anesthesia, a medical coma for 3, 4, 5 days, is not performed in the United States. It's performed in Germany. It's performed in Mexico. It had been around since approximately the 1990s. It had essentially 100% rate of safety, that is, no one had ever died from it, and it had a very high rate of success. There is a physician, a University of Texas trained anesthesiologist, Dr. Fernando Cantu, who's going to fly here from Mexico to describe the process, and it involves, again, infusions of ketamine over a very long period of time, the idea being that it causes the brain to reset so that you don't have this feedback loop causing the pain. The first one, in late November, 19th through the 23rd, there is a high-dose infusion, and what do you know? The lesions begin to heal, and there's a slight less turning out of the feet. And yet the pain was still not where they wanted it. So Maya stayed there, and then on November 19th through the 23rd, she went through another high-dose ketamine infusion. Now, during this period of time, other than during the middle of the infusion process, there were absolutely no negative signs from Maya. She had a brief increase in her liver function results, but only, we're talking, for a matter of hours. And as soon as the ketamine infusion was done, they went right back. And it's important to note that other than at that time, and through all of her ketamine treatments, Maya's liver functions, which is a thing you look at if you've got a medication like this and you want to see, is it hurting somebody? You look at the liver functions, and her liver functions have stayed normal throughout. And you'll see the medical records to show that. All right. So then, a miracle. By December 28th, Maya's lesions are noticeably less. Her feet are starting to not be as turned out. In fact, by the end of January, and we'll show you the films, she's actually able to get back in the pool. You can see a picture of her here in, I believe, late January, and this is her. You'll notice the feet looking better. She's on Kyle's shoulders there. You'll notice a real smile coming up. She's able to do her warm water therapy, but she still is having some pain. And the idea here was to get this kid out of the wheelchair, right? They wanted to get her out of the wheelchair. And to get her out of the wheelchair, they really needed to get the feet totally back, and they needed to get the pain levels back so it wasn't so painful when she walked, so she could build up her legs. That was the idea. So they go back to Johns Hopkins, okay? All right. Central port means there's an operation, and there's the note. Placement implanted central venous port. That's a tube under her arm to allow her to continue high-level fusions. Not like Mexico, but outpatient procedures. And she has a number of them through the course of the next 9 months. Through the course of this, and with a doctor named Dr. Hannah, who Dr. Kirkpatrick recommended, Dr. Cantu recommended, because frankly, ketamine is incredibly expensive and it's not covered by health insurance. So Dr. Hannah was set up to do these on a regular basis.
Great.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I better get going. Okay, so Maya goes back to Johns Hopkins, and Dr. Anthony Kreisman, who had seen her before the long-term ketamine infusion, quote, ketamine coma, and they commented on how withdrawn and how much pain she's in. Listen to what he says on May 11th after about 30 of these infusions and the long-term infusion. She is a completely different child from when last examined. By that I mean she is not in any pain, she is not moaning, she is smiling and interactive, she is very engaged. She moves spontaneously in her wheelchair without incurring pain. Through the course of that summer, because the ketamine is so expensive, they tried two other therapies. One's known as hyperbaric, you can see it right here, extreme high oxygen content, which has been known to help some CRPS patients. She also tries the IVIG treatment to increase her immune system because it's believed that CRPS can be, the immune system may be part of CRPS. And by the end of the summer, she is almost back on her feet. This is in 2016, around August of 2016. Maya is almost back on her feet. We have video of her actually using that as kind of a jungle gym to try to strengthen up her arms and her legs. Everyone is very excited. Everybody is looking forward to Maya getting on her feet. And then she has what they hope to be a minor relapse that turns into a fairly major relapse. And she goes back and has larger ketamine doses with Dr. Hannah on October 5 and 6. And she has some gastrointestinal problems and a lot of pain in the midsection. There are stories that you'll hear about her screaming at night. She could not take the pain in her stomach anymore. At one point, the screaming was so intense that the family got walkie-talkies, so the family could stay all the way over on this side of the house and Maya over here because no one could sleep. So they communicated by walkie-talkie. All right, so they decided on the 7th, October 7th, a key date, to take her to Johns Hopkins ER. Now, the reason was that we had Hurricane Matthew tracking up. If you've been in Florida long enough, the hurricanes start to blur together. I believe it was Hurricane Matthew tracking up the eastern seaboard here, getting winds like, 35 to 50 miles an hour. To people from Florida, it's like, wake us up when it's a Cat 4. And, but to, the Kowalskis were from Chicago and had never experienced this before. They had visions of like the movie Twister going around in their head, and so all of the ERs and everything were closed, so they took her up to St. Pete to the ER. And Maya is seen by 5 different doctors and groups of nurses and social workers from the ER, and she comes in about 8:46 in the morning, and she's crying and screaming, and she's in a fetal position, clutching her stomach, and she is just out of her mind. And the ER doctors there start to react rather negatively to this. Beata comes in approximately 2 to 3 hours later and once again goes through the history, which Jack has been trying to relate, of all of the different visits to Johns Hopkins and all the different treatments and how everything has failed. And the only thing that has worked has been the long-term ketamine infusions, and we can try this. Can we try that? Can we try a pump? Can we try, what can we do to get our daughter out of pain? For some reason, the doctors there either review all the past records and the some 7 to 8 to 9 prior visits, and the fact that she's had surgery there to have a port implanted to help her with the ketamine infusion. But for some reason, they decide that that isn't it at all. She really doesn't have CRPS. That the mom must be making all of this up. That this is, as a nurse, who we think is the one who actually made this diagnosis, Munchausen by proxy. Textbook Munchausen by proxy. Now imagine this is an ER, the child's back there, the parents pulling their hair out, trying to explain to the hospital, this is what Jack will testify to, and Beata is trying to explain to them in an ER where they've been about 5 times before exactly all the history that's going back, that's already in their records, including records from the other hospital. Everything's there. For some reason, the doctors, nurses, and social workers ignore all of that and decide this is not CRPS, that this is the child is making it up and the parents are making it up, and then this must be child abuse by the parents. Now, the court has told you that there's pretty much a hair trigger on suspicions, and so they make the call, and that's not part of this case. You're supposed to make the call. Slightest different suspicion, you're supposed to make the call. So that's not a bad thing, whether it was right or not, at that moment. The case is about what happens after that and the failure to diagnose previously so that none ever happen. Maya, they try to take Maya home after the first night. They're told that they need to observe the child overnight. Fine. But by the second day, Maya is still in pain. They do knock her out with a lot of drugs to get rid of the initial pain. And they give her ketamine. So the next day, she's much calmer. And so then they decide that Maya cannot go home. They decide that taking her home is AMA, against medical advice. And they say, if you try to take your daughter home, we're calling security. So the Kowalskis don't have much choice. They end up leaving. And the next thing they know, they're off for the races and Maya is an unbelievable journey up through and including the death of Beata. Now, what you'll notice in the records, again, the records paint a glowing report of Maya. Just how great she's doing, how much she enjoys things. What a great stay she's having. She's getting this, she's getting that. The only thing she was getting to do was play the piano. Maya knows how to play the piano. She got to play the piano, and she got to draw pictures. Every once in a while, she could send a letter. If she wanted to talk to her mom, it had to be on a supervised call. She could only see her dad and her brother on pre-arranged and monitored situations. If she wanted to see, they hired an attorney, obviously. If she wanted to see her attorney, the nurses would demand that the door stay open. She never had a private moment with an attorney. They're Polish Roman Catholic, which is about as Roman Catholic as you can get, and have a very close relationship with their priest. So the priest went in to see Maya, and he will testify that when he arrived, he was told that he could not see Maya, and that she had had her religious artifacts taken away. We have a photograph of it. And he asked about this, and they said it's because we believe her mom is controlling her through religion. And so he was not allowed to see her that day. And it took a few other attempts, and then finally he was allowed in, but he was told, no religious procedures. You come say hello, no religious procedures. I told you already about the 42 hours of being placed in a darkened room and told, this is a new type of EEG, Maya. We're gonna really figure this out if this is in your mind or not. No, it wasn't. It was the surveillance room. And again, the goal, because these doctors had somehow gotten confused to think that CRPS includes paralysis. Paralysis is not part of CRPS at all. And yet, they were trying to prove that Maya could actually get out of bed, that she was faking it, that she was sitting in that wheelchair all the time, just, I don't know what reason, But she was faking all this. Actually, when nobody was watching, Maya was getting up out of that chair and walking around everywhere. So they put the commode just a little bit out of reach, right? Figuring when she thinks nobody's watching, she'd get up, she had to go to the bathroom, go over there. Well, that didn't happen. And you'll see video of Maya having to be carried over to the commode. Of course, her skin started to show the lesions again. Maya started on a dive. Badly, badly getting worse. Depressed. The lesions are forming. You'll see them. Here, now they just may look like scratches here, but you can't see too much of the stuff on the back. What you'll notice through the series of photographs, and thank goodness Dad here took photographs of Maya's lesions, and you'll see those photographs, and I want you to compare them to the medical records, because you'll see on the dermatological reports, you'll see skin normal, and yet you'll have photographs from that day showing lesions. On January 6th, they decided that they needed photographs to prove that Maya really didn't have as many lesions as they said. So they brought someone else in, and we have better pictures. You can see a little bit of Maya's face there. They claim, oh, this didn't bother her at all. There was no authorization from the family, no notification to the family. Maya was screaming bloody murder not to do this because it hurt. They took off her clothes except for her training bra and her shorts, pulled down her shorts, pulled up her shorts there to take photographs of her. Now their testimony is, oh, this wasn't bad on her at all. She was fine with it. No, what she's told is, if you don't let us take photographs, you're not going to see your mom. That's what they told her. So they end up taking photographs, and somehow, where are the photographs? We've only got a few. We do have photographs from the father at the time, however. So by this point, it's pretty bad. Let's talk just briefly about Beata. During this period of time, Beata is only allowed to talk to her daughter. Hopefully we'll be able to play some of the tapes where we'll be able to hear Beata trying to talk to her daughter, but they put certain things off limits, like, how are you doing? How is your treatment? How is your medication? Things like that. No, you can't talk about that. Not allowed to talk about that. They're the most mundane things you can imagine on these telephone calls. We are allowed to use them. And in those, you'll hear one of the social workers, Kathy Beatty, who was assigned Maya. Now, she was a social worker from one floor, but wherever Maya went, Kathy Beatty followed. And we have the trail of emails and notes leading from notification to the general counsel, through risk management, on down to one of the senior doctors, down to Beatty, about doing this stuff, including what you just saw there in the photograph. We'll prove they knew it at the highest levels. Beata is going freaking nuts, the evidence will show. They find out that Beatty's had some disciplinary problems. They find out, kind of through the grapevine, how bad things are for Maya. They find out about the lesions. Now her feet are completely turned in. And Maya has become so weak, the CRPS has developed to the point where she can't sit up straight. Okay? Now,